and alcohol policy for commercial motor vehicle drivers and other employees to perform safety-sensitive functions. 5200 attendance. 6107 authorization to accept and distribute electronic records and to use electronic signatures. 8210 school calendar. 8400 school safety information. 8450 control of casual contact vehicles with reissues. 8462 student abuse and neglect. 8600 transportation.
And Sandy supported that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sandy supported that. Mr. Donahue.
Board members, our policy committee met recently on this spring update from Neola. I don't think you'll see, if you've had a chance to review them in detail, anything highly controversial here. I do want to make a note, however, that the policy committee at the time did discuss that interest of looking at our dual enrollment policy. And as you know, that issue came up in regards to costs to families above and beyond what the district FTE allocation is for that program. And so in conversation with the board policy committee on that issue, the decision was made not to modify that policy, and that's why you don't see any further action on that in this policy update. So I certainly wanted to bring that to the attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion? Questions for Mr. Donahue? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett? Mrs. Ryder, yes. Mrs. Tobler?
Yes.
Mr. Dubonic?
Yes.
Mrs. Lesh? Mr. Wentworth?
Yes. Item 4, administrative layoff. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion that the Indiana Board of Education resolve to implement a layoff of administrative personnel due to the budgetary limitations and proposed reductions in state funding for the 2020-2021 school year per the affected administrator's contract, and that the layoff is to take effect 30 days after board action. For Athletic Director Lonnie Hoover.
Support.
Mr. Donahue.
Board members, I certainly recognize the very trying time that an action such as represents. And I have presented multiple occasions through May and June as we discuss how we've gotten to the stage that we find ourselves in. Many of the reductions proposed at the state level, looking at our fund balance resources and making our best estimate on what we can sustain budgetarily given those projections. And so at the June 29th board meeting, when the board adopted that budget, it did include a full list of assumptions and staffing changes that you found in that Google document. And that is still available to you to go back and review if you need to review that resource in the coming months. Because once that board adopted budget occurred at the time, the administration had to begin looking at how to implement those. And so notices went to our administrators with regard to the specific cuts in departments and programs, and those conversations have begun or are yet to come as we look into the coming month. The reason this issue is at the board table immediately is you do have that contractual stipulation about a 30-day notice. And so the timing of this, perhaps to address that comment that was made in the public comment, the timing of this does need to be done now for that reason and some others as we look to how we prepare for potential return of students and staff as you get to mid-August for administrators and teachers toward the end of the month and students on the 8th of September. I know there's been a lot of conversation about how this is intended to play out. As you may know, I did provide to the board a report today to look at the steps that we've put in place to ensure the administration of athletic programs in the district, should there be school in September. And so I have shared that with you, and I can speak to that in general. We do see a way in which administrative staff at each building will be stepping up to provide that kind of coordination of events that are happening in our district for our teams, both the home games and away games. We also have coverage planned by the administrative assistants at the middle school to be that kind of administrative assistant support, transportation scheduling, check requests, invoice processing, all those kinds of behind the scenes things that do have to happen to ensure that district operations of any kind take place. So in that report, I believe I've shown you how we will approach that. And like any change, we need to monitor that as it begins and talk to the engaged folks and troubleshoot problem areas and modify our approach if we find that we need to. In that report, I've also outlined to you the anticipated budget savings that we foresee in this change. But all of that, the preparedness, the planning, doesn't get us away from the difficult choice. It is hard to make decisions like this, and none of us does it with abandon. We do it because we are sometimes tasked with these difficult choices as school leaders, given the circumstances that lie before us. And I think that could possibly change, and we always reserve that too. But given where we are right now with what we know, I think this is a good action, albeit a difficult one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from board members?
I would like to say this is a very difficult decision. And I know people are saying that MHSAA came out with an article, but if you read the article, there is no set plan for athletics. But we do have a set plan that we have to educate kids. And this type of cut is big for the savings for the elementary level. And that is our foundation of education. And coming back after the crisis, if we come back, we're going to need the support at that level and all levels. It's unfortunate we have to make this decision, but we've all sat down and we just have to do it.
Thank you, Sandy.
I'd also like to say something. I'd like to say that I'm very sorry that we have to make this difficult decision. I'm very sad that we have to lay anyone off. And I'd like to thank Mr. Hoover for his dedication to the district. From a budgetary and fiscal standpoint, I think it's the right thing to do. Community members have spoken out that waiting until we have a new superintendent in place. I agree with that for most of our decisions that we need to be making, but with fall athletics starting soon, I think it's important that we put the framework in place for this fall. And I would encourage Mr. Donahue to share the full details of the framework that he shared with the board when he has those available with coaches, staff, and parents as soon as possible.
I would like to add that that information that Mr. Donahue shared with us was very thorough and very well thought out. And again, it is not easy to lay anyone off. Unfortunately, we're in a very unusual circumstance this year because of COVID-19, the economic crisis and so on. It's unfortunate, but we have to be a board that's responsive to the needs of all of our students. It's sad. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I guess my only comment would be, I don't know, can you hear me? Okay. I saw firsthand where I work, we had to reduce our workforce 20%, and that was hard. And you see a lot of friends and people have to move on, and it's always difficult, like you say, when you're going to have to make cuts. We do have to arrive at a balanced budget, which this year we are going to take a deficit. We're going to reduce our fund balance, but we have to make cuts. And we don't know, a year from now, we may have to make further cuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll play off Jim's that it's not just between the community schools, it's across the district, it's across the county, state, nation. So, and we don't know, they're not even giving us a time frame. They're saying 2 years out, it could trickle and cause a 5-year reaction. But my first, goal as a school board member is, education and students. And when it came down to the particular budget cuts and how it was gonna affect certain things, I am going to support the foundation and education of our kids first.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryder, yes. Mrs. Tobler,
Yes.
Mr. DeBlamick,
Yes.
Mrs. Lesh,
Yes.
Mr. Wentworth.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item J, as that concludes our regular piece of our board meeting for this evening. We will move now into our round two interviews for superintendent of schools. We have 7 minutes before that is begin to take place, so we will have a recess for 7 minutes.
Were we gonna officially table the vice president vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
Good point.
we have to do something
Yeah.
today for 30 days.
I checked off the wrong thing. Yes. Appointment of a board vice president. May I have a motion, please?
I make a motion, we just make a motion.
We can-
I make a motion to appoint Ruth Ryder as Vice President of the Board of Education.
Second.
Comment, discussion. There was comment about tabling it till next time. What do we want to do? We want to take care of this now?
I think we should just take care of it.
A secretary, right?
We can do that right now too, right?
Mhm.
What?
Appoint the secretary.
We can make a motion for whatever we need to. Yep. Okay. Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryder, yes. Mrs. Tobler,
Yes.
Mr. DeBlamick,
Yes.
Mrs. Lesh,
Yeah.
Mr. Wentworth.
Yes. We don't have it on our agenda, but is there any further motion?
I make a motion to appoint Kelly Lush as Secretary of the Canton Board of Education.
Support?
Any discussion?
Kelly, is that okay?
Kelly?
I think we're good for a while.
I never asked.
I think we just got through a lot of busy stuff, so.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Burnett, Mrs. Ryder, yes. Mrs. Tobler,
Yes.
Mr. DeBlamick,
Yes.
Mrs. Lesh, and Mr. Wentworth.
Yes. Now, that concludes, unless there's any more motions. That concludes the first part of our board meeting. We will take a recess until 5:45, when we will move into the second round interviews for superintendent. I would ask any members of the public that are involved in this meeting to log off here and join our live stream to watch that. Thank you. Meeting is
Recess.
recessed.
Test. Are we,
The meeting is now out of recess. Moving on to item J, second round interviews for superintendent of schools. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Dobias at this point. He's going to walk through some of the process for us before we begin with our first interview.
Thank you, Mr.
Mark.
President. Good to be back here again tonight. It was good to be here this afternoon. We had some good conversations with the candidates this afternoon. I want to remind people who are viewing in that you can get an audience feedback form on the website. I encourage people to do that, and I will close those out 5 minutes after each interview today. For the board members, there was some conversation going back and forth through email a little bit about the process this evening and the order for asking questions. And I think, and I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding things and we're using the right process everybody's comfortable with here. I think the last thing I saw was something about asking questions in order of seniority or something like that on the board. Was that okay? Was that agreeable to everybody? Because a lot of times in this process, people just jump in. But if you'd rather have an order and you all agree to it, that works for me. If you have a 30-minute interview, you're probably going to get through one question each. You might get to a second question each. And so if you got to a second question, would you want to keep the same order again, or would you want to flip-flop it? What would you like to do? Just to give Dennis some direction here.
I think the order of seniority, then we know where to go next, then we know where to be back, but I guess that's a group. That was my thought of what I.
An organization.
Yeah. Organization.
So that was to kind of keep that order of seniority.
Yeah, like if Ruth is going, then you know who's going next if you look at that seniority sheet, so you kind of can keep yourself on task, I guess. I don't know. That's my thought of why I like.
Can we after someone asks a question, the candidate answers, we
Follow up.
with a little quick follow-up?
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea. If that's okay with you, I think that's a good idea for someone to jump in with a follow-up question or thought, if that's all right. The second thing I wanted to get to is the length of the interviews. Okay, we're originally scheduled for 30 minutes. So if we're doing that, we'd say no new question after 30 minutes. Okay, but you've got one less candidate tonight. So do you want to open it up and keep it longer, or do you want to stay with that same format? 30 minutes, and I'll give Dennis a high sign at 30 minutes. We won't start another question after that. Is that correct?
And then do we allow the candidate a closing statement after that?
Well, that's a good question.
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Say like a closing statement, less than a minute, something like that.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm putting together, I've got the feedback from this afternoon ready to send out to you. I'll get feedback from tonight. We'll send that out to you. I think it's a good idea for just after the last interview tonight, just like a 5-minute debrief, 5 or 10 minute debrief. Certainly more discussion coming tomorrow night, but is it okay to have a brief debrief just right afterwards tonight? Okay. Are we ready for the candidate? I guess the one thing on this.
Somebody just walk through the list with me. I know it starts with Harvey.
Harvey, and then
Same.
Sandy, Jim, myself, Kelly, you follow Kelly, and then Chris, our new person who's been here for quite some time now. Yeah.
Michelle, if you are able, can you just tell the board when 15 minutes is up?
Sure.
Okay. And I would ask you throughout tonight and tomorrow to please stop me if there's something you don't understand. If we don't have absolute clarity, let's stop and take our time, okay? All right, I'll go get our first candidate.
Education, I'd like to welcome back to Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Just want to make sure you're situated okay. Everything.
Yeah, it's fine.
Really don't need headphones, right?
Yeah, you don't need it. I didn't think so either. He said, welcome back. I asked before I came in, he says, yeah, you'll need him.
Well, yeah.
You want to have something plugged in there, though.
Just in case. Oh, so I don't hear them.
Feedback.
Okay.
Mark, welcome. Just a side note regarding no masks for our candidates tonight. That is an exception within the executive orders that if you're speaking, I'll let Kelly call it,
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but if you're speaking for.
publicly and being, and
Yeah.
that you can remove your mask. So
With social distancing. Yep.
the board will continue to wear masks, but we will allow our candidates to choose to not wear masks.
Or he steps back a little.
Oh, I can see it up in the corner.
Are you good?
All right, so if I stay here, you'll be okay. I can tilt it as we go.
Michelle. Mark, real quick, walk through the process this evening. We're going to just shoot questions at you, starting with Dr. Burnett, and working our way, not exactly around the room, but we have an order. There might be follow-up questions to those. We're going to go for 30 minutes, and then we will stop with the questions, and we'll allow you a minute to make a closing statement if you'd like. Okay. So, to Dr. Burnett for the first question.
Sure. Yep. Thank you.
The mission and belief in schools.
Oh, he can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, never mind. I'm muted. I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me now? Very good. Okay. The mission, vision, and beliefs of Buchanan Community Schools focuses on preparing students for lifelong success in a global community. How would you achieve this in regards to diversity, including building a school teaching staff and school board that is representative of the Buchanan community which the district serves?
That's an excellent question. I think first of all, when you're talking about diversity and looking at our staff, I can stand here and say proudly that at the middle school, we tried to, as a leader, tried to get as much diversity as possible and actually have at least one staff member that I hired during my time here from the diversity standpoint that I helped support our staff and students in the building and continue to do so even as I moved on. I think when you're looking at diversity across the district, I think we have to maybe, obviously, when you're looking for staff, you're going to actually, maybe make that a high priority. Okay, looking for diversity when you go out and interview and so on. Some people might say, well, how do we find that diversity, or what can we do? I think that, as a community, we have to look within sometimes and maybe promote our students and, any students that we know maybe at the high school level that might be going into education or think they might be going into education, try to encourage them, no matter what diverse background they have, to maybe come back to home to work. I mean, obviously that's why I've stayed in Southwestern Michigan my entire life. So I think from that standpoint, so that's how I would look at it, being representative and try to encourage our staff or our students that are here to leave if they're going into education and then maybe come back. We might want to look as a district, working with the area colleges to kind of see what they have out there from the docket of a diverse background. I know that you can work with different colleges nearby. I know that Bethel has a strong program in education. We could contact them and see what they might have in the pipeline coming out to answer your question with respect to diversity. One last thing, maybe look at with area businesses and maybe coming up with some type of scholarship. Okay, that may not be out there from the standpoint of if you're going into education, especially if you have a diverse background, that we're looking at that, you might get some money each year towards an education.
Thank you. Mrs. Tobler.
Other than COVID, what do you see as the single biggest issue facing BCS at this time?
Obviously, COVID is the number one, concern out there. I think from the standpoint of BCS and being here 18 years, I think that there's a concern in the community, maybe some board members, some teachers, and so on, with respect to how the community is communicated with, the staff is communicated with. I'll go along with that and say a dovetail to that, besides just the communication piece, is how people are treated. And obviously that's something I've talked about in my 2 interviews, believing deep down that you treat people with respect, treat people how you want to be treated. I think you can continue to move this district forward. So to answer your question, I think those 2 things, communication and then how people are treated. And I think I have a strong background of being in the district and being able to communicate with everybody, not just teachers and parents and staff, but custodians, students, all the above.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lamy.
We face very tough educational times. Please discuss your ability to make tough decisions and then stand by unpopular decisions. If someone in the community disagreed with the decision, how would you handle the backlash?
Obviously, that type of question or answer came up in my afternoon discussions with Mr. Dobiash. I think that in my time here in Buchanan, as a leader at the middle school level and also as a district level, but definitely as a leader at the middle school level, obviously there were some unpopular decisions that I had to do as a leader of that building during my 12 years as the principal, but also as my 5 years as the assistant principal. I think when you're coming down and you're thinking about, what's right, what's wrong, how do you act on that? You have to first of all go back and look at it. Is it in the best interest of the student? Does it match up with board policy? Okay. Obviously, some of you were on the board or were on the board when some of those decisions were made at the middle school when I was the principal, and you had supported those policies that were in place. And so, for lack of a better phrase, those were the policies that we instituted. They might not have been popular, but I had no problem instituting those policies and following through on those. Anytime that there was a concern that went to the previous superintendent, I can't remember anywhere we changed some of the policies or anything. As a matter of fact, I know there's some people sitting on this board that I disagreed with at certain times, but that was a policy that was in place, and that's something that we acted on, and it was held up by the superintendent at that time. From the standpoint of unpopular with parents, as I said in my interview this afternoon, I think you know that you're doing the right thing when, even though you might have a disagreement with a parent over a policy or procedure that you put in place, okay, let's say dealing with kids and suspending them, that when a parent comes back to you after they've left the middle school or they're graduating from high school and say, hey, I remember when you came in at 6:30 in the morning with my kid, even though you could have suspended him or you did suspend him, and yet I said, hey, come in and talk to me in the morning. Let's meet at night. So I think that's important, that even though you have to make those decisions, that those parents, whoever they may be, and staff members, understand that you're trying to do it in the best interest of kids and staff.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ryder.
I was part of the online viewing of your open house meeting this afternoon, and I really appreciated. I mean, I've learned more about you as a result of those answers. And you touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to have you go a little bit more in depth. There have been some comments that our curriculum was underwhelming during COVID. So the question that I have is, how would you approach teaching and learning differently if we're not in the classroom in the fall? And how would you hold principals and teachers accountable? How would you utilize other staff members also during that time?
You mind repeating that again?
Oh, sure. How would you approach teaching and learning differently if we're not in the classroom? And how would you hold teachers and principals accountable? And then what about other staff? Because they're still part of our staff.
I'll first of all touch to the first one, different if we're not in the classroom. I think that, and I've said this to other people, my experience, working in this district, I know what we were doing as a staff and as a district, living in my house. There were 3 other districts that we could look at and see what was out there. I think that, looking from the standpoint of where we are now and where we want to go in the future, if you were to talk to elementary principals right now, and I'm having that discussion with them later on this week, we have to look at how we're going to make sure that our kids are ready to go in the digital age or in the technology area. And that's why I've been pushing to get more technology so that we're ready to go. I think from the standpoint of middle school and high school, in talking with teachers and knowing what we were doing at that time and versus what we might need to do, I think we have to ask the tough questions. Were we getting the most out of what we were doing? Do we feel comfortable with that? There wasn't a whole lot of structure put on us out there right there at that time because we came in one day, we were pretty much gone the next day, not a whole lot to plan for, prepare for. But as I've been meeting with the area superintendents online with the ideas of what's going forward, there's a lot more structure that'll be in place. I think parents have to understand, as the board does, that there'll be a little more teeth to what they're doing. There may be some waivers that have to be in place if we're doing online or we want to do that, but there's still going to be that idea of we have to hold people a little more accountable. From the standpoint of principals and teachers, like I said, we have to look at maybe what teachers are doing and put some expectations out there. Not that there wasn't necessarily those before, but I just think those expectations might be a little bit higher. I know in the meetings that we've been having with the back to school committee, we've been talking about, what might those expectations be? And it might be, some districts say, hey, you had to have 3 videos each day. Some districts have said you might have to have 1 video each day. I think we're in the realm of let's look at what we're doing. Let's first of all make sure we have technology in place. Let's make sure the teachers are trained before the school year starts so they feel comfortable with it. But then as the leadership team, which we'll talk about later on this week, we're going to discuss what those expectations might be. But I think you have to keep in mind that, when you're dealing with that technology piece, which is a new way of teaching for some people, and maybe at the elementary level, they haven't worked with it much at all. Okay, that's why we're trying to institute Google Classroom across the entire district, so they feel comfortable with that. But we need to get them that training so they feel comfortable. From the principal standpoint, I think it's just making sure and holding them accountable for, are you having regular meetings with your staff? Are you talking about the data that you're getting back? However, whatever data we decide to collect, okay, are we looking at that data? And then how is that informing what we're doing from the instruction standpoint? Last part was staff, I think.
Yeah,
right?
but there's staff, parapros, how would you utilize?
Yeah, I think from that standpoint of other staff, we had this discussion when they were out before that, hey, in interventionists or professional staff, you're allowed to use them pretty much any way you want to. And so I know, most buildings were using them to work with kids one-on-one. I know that at the middle school level, they were working very hard with, having them make contact with those kids. I know that the EL person that works with me, making sure that he had weekly meetings with their kids. I know at the high school level that the 2 interventions up there had office hours virtually that kids could check in and work with them. I just think making sure that we're all on the same page, that we're all here to support kids. And I think sometimes principals have to be a little more specific and have a little bit more expectations of what they're expecting their interventions to do. I think that's a conversation that we need across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you are selected to be our next superintendent, what is your vision for Buchanan Community Schools?
The statement on the website, as I said before, says to make sure that we're, providing lifelong experience or, making sure they can be successful. So I think my vision, the way I look at what we're trying to do here is that we're, we obviously want to provide them with a sound education, but that means kids that need to be successful, whether they're going on to a 2-year school, a 4-year school, some type of CE program or trade program, or just the general workforce. I mean, that's our job. We're supposed to prepare them. So I think from that standpoint, we want to make sure that we provide, a strong foundation for them, but also making sure that we are looking at what extracurriculars that they're involved in. I touched on that this afternoon. I believe in the first interview also that extracurricular piece has always been important to me no matter where I've been, but it's definitely in my mind, I believe that's strong within the district here just because of the fine arts that's in the community and high school and so on. I think that we can't leave out that we need to make sure that we provide, enrichment activities or advanced classes, however that may shake out. And that may mean the board needs to make some decisions on what they think is important. That's just where I see the vision going. I think we also have to look at We're making sure that our kids know how to use the technology that we're asking them to use so that they can communicate with people, they can apply using that technology, not just playing games or going to a certain website, but how to use that in the real world.
Thank you. I really like your answer too with the enrichment and the advanced classes, because I think we've gotten away from that as Buchanan Community Schools. And I know the board here has discussed it many times, so thank you for
Yeah.
that.
I think that goes to when I was leader at the middle school and we created that when 6th through 8th was here and we created that algebra class. It was only one class, but at least it was one at the time where
Right.
you could get 8th grade algebra credit or you could get high school credit at the middle school.
I think that's cool. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is to me. Mark, one of our desired leadership skills that we listed is that our superintendent empowers principals and administrative staff, has the ability to align, mentor, and support and build an exceptional leadership team. How would you achieve that?
Okay, so I'm understanding there were two parts to that, empowering principals and then mentoring that team. Okay. So I think first of all, from an empowering standpoint, when you look at empowering principals, if we're talking, I talked about this a little bit earlier, if we're talking about empowering principals, obviously if PLCs is the way the district still wants to go, and I believe that it is, that we're making sure that as the leader, I'm making sure that we have the high expectations out there of whatever they might be for PLC. We talked about that, making sure that they know what those expectations are, making sure that we're looking at the data and that that's informing instruction. And so when you're empowering principals to do that, you're expecting them to have meetings with those teachers, have meetings with the teacher teams. That's what we did here at the middle school as the leader. We sat down, they had monthly meetings to start out. At first, as the leader of that group, I was leading those or working with them on the specific questions that they had to answer, kind of leading them through that path. We started to do that with the vertical team, trying to teach them how to do that. Obviously, school was canceled, so we didn't get a chance to get into that real in depth. But I think that's the point out there is that when you're empowering somebody to do something, you need to make sure they know how to do it. And if principals don't feel comfortable with that, then let's get them more training, whether that's me or somebody else in-house that can explain that to them in a little bit more detail. And then you're allowing them to go out and do what they need to do in their buildings. You know, at certain times, I'm going to come back and ask the principals to come back and sit with me, show me what their data is, so we're on the same page and it meets our vision. The second part of that was mentoring. Can you read that again?
Has the ability to align, mentor, support, and build an exceptional leadership team.
I think when you're talking about mentoring, part of that is being professional with them. Okay, not being afraid to have those crucial conversations, but doing it in a professional manner. Okay, and I've had to do that at this time, so I feel like I'm comfortable working with the leadership team that's in place right now. Understanding that they all have strengths and I have strengths, and we need to feed off each other. If there's something that I have a question with or a concern with, I'm going to mentor them and talk to them and say, hey, I think you might want to look at doing it this way. What do you think about this? But putting that back to the research and evidence that's out there to show them that this is what we need to do. I think that I've done that this year as a curriculum person. There's been some different discussions out there on why we're doing certain things with respect to essential standards. And I went back and showed that principal, hey, this is what was done. This was what was shown at the state site. This is what was out there. This is why I'm asking you to change and do it this way. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
There's always a learning curve when you start a new position. What do you think you will need to learn in order to be a highly effective superintendent? And what resources will you use to help you learn?
Great question. I think first of all, as a new superintendent, for me, that would be a little bit easier because I am on the inside. And that's a tough decision for you to have to make. You have to decide whether that's the way you want to go. Because obviously, if I was to move up and take that job, then there's another opening below. And how does that work in these times? I would argue that I would have a plan in place, to transition plan to work through that. But I think as a new superintendent, not knowing everything, okay, and then maybe there's some policies and procedures of how things have been done and so on that from a legality standpoint. And I would argue that being a member or working with the Leadership Academy, that is something that I'd like to sign up for through MASA. They give you a mentor superintendent, okay, which can kind of help you out and kind of give you some areas of maybe if you're new to the position or you're new to the district, some things that you might want to do. And so there's about 5 or 6 areas that you can kind of work through and go to and do that. I think there's some, obviously, some superintendents in the area that if you have questions, if you're working closely with them on what they're doing and how they're supporting their staff and stuff, kind of the same thing I always talk about when you're talking about leadership and working with administrators, that, you know, if you don't know everything, we'll find it. So I think that's what I would do.
Thank you. Dr. Burnett.
Okay, you currently work for Buchanan Community Schools. How do you plan to incorporate an objective educational leadership and administrative style that focuses on holistic student success first and not allow personal bias, subjective opinions, and current relationships with staff, parents, and community members to negatively influence this process?
I think, first of all, I think that if you're the leader of the district, you're the superintendent, your job is to, like I've talked about, make sure that students, staff, and high academics are number one. And I think in my time in Buchanan, the 18 years that I've been here, I've always tried to put that forward. And so I've never had a problem with handling those tough questions or those issues that come up and trying to be objective and say, okay, like I talked about before, this is what our goal is. This is what our mission and vision is. Where does that fall in place with what we're wanting to do? From the standpoint of being objective and having those crucial conversations, those of you that have been here well know that, and nobody likes to do this, but during my time as a leader at the middle school, there were a few different times that, you know, we were working with staff that were struggling, and we ended up having to put them on a plan of improvement, and we followed that plan of improvement into the letter of the law. During that time, we also had the teachers usually on board to kind of let them know what was going on, so we kept those lines of communication open. And when it was all said and done, sometimes those people were off those plans of improvement. They were doing better, which that's obviously what you want, okay? But at other times, we've had to work through the process of moving those people out. And does anybody like to do that? No, I don't like to do that. That's no fun. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody wants to take someone's livelihood away from them. But I've always gone back to, are we doing what we're doing in the best interest of the kids, the district, and where I want my kids in that classroom for working with that staff member? From the standpoint of principals, it's a little different for me because I know them, and I've also had to have those crucial conversations with them at times to say, hey, we might want to look at doing this. Let's look at the data. I think if you're using research space and evidence based and going back to the data, it's hard for people to argue as much or have a disagreement with you. Thank you.
How will you add value to the school beyond what you currently provide in your position now?
Let's see. I think that when you talk about value to the school or to the district, above and beyond what I do right now, I think my role right now as the Executive Director of Academic Services, which we talked about as being the curriculum director, okay, being the K-7 assessment coordinator, and then I've done some work with writing some grants with a couple of the elementary people. When you look about the superintendent, in my mind, you're looking at, you know, stepping up to that next level and making sure that the entire district is communicating the same mission and vision, that you're working with the community members, whether it's businesses, parents, and then also the staff within the district. What value? I just think that I'm able to see the big picture and think outside the box. I think that's a strength. When you talk about that 5, talk about being prepared. Okay, I think I have no problem sitting down, doing the extra time, taking the extra time, making sure that I'm prepared for what we're going to do. And that's how I would work with adding extra value to the community and the school.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kalani? And you can pass if you want.
I'll pass for now.
Okay, this is a question that it's near and dear to my heart because I've made a similar transition. If you're selected as our next superintendent, how will you go from being a colleague with administrators to being their supervisor? How will you ensure that this is a smooth transition? And will you need to build trust among the administrative team?
I think that when you talk about, you're already working here, and so you have a different relationship with people. I think that I'll look at it from the standpoint of when I came into the district 18 years ago, I came in as the assistant principal. And so I had a working relationship with teachers as an assistant principal. And then when you're asked to become the principal and you move up to that role, that's a different level, a different area of responsibility. And, the same as moving from principal up to curriculum director, for lack of a shorter phrase. I think you have to keep in mind, like I've kind of talked about my entire time that we've been talking, that you have to make sure that you have your non-negotiables in place, and people are aware of those. You have high academic standards being one of them. You have to make sure that you're communicating what your expectations are, how they're going to be held accountable, and then you have to just make sure that you take the emotions out of it. I mean, there's times that as a leader at the middle school, you had to have those crucial conversations with people, and you just have to address it from the standpoint of, I think there's a mistake here. I think we need to talk about it. Let's talk it out. This is what evidence I have. Let's hear your side of the story. But ultimately, I'm the leader, and I have to make this decision that I think is in the best interest of the building, whether you're a principal or as the entire district. And I think from the standpoint of working with the leadership that's in place now, they understand that role. Obviously, there would be a little bit of a transition to do that, but I think the majority of them understand where I'm coming from and what my beliefs are already. So I don't think that it would be that tough of a transition.
Thank you.
Mrs. Leish.
Oh, I thought,
Go
okay.
ahead.
All right. What is your greatest weakness and the area for improvement? Or how would you, sorry. That's weird. Really.
Can you repeat that again, please?
What is a weakness and or an area for improvement? Sorry, I read that completely wrong.
I think that when we're talking about a superintendent and that person being in charge of an entire district, okay? And you look at, in my mind, I've always thought that as a superintendent, you need to have a wide variety of experiences, okay? And obviously, if you look at my background, it's definitely at the middle school and high school level, majority of it, teaching and coaching and as an administrator. And so when you look at the standpoint of what's my greatest weakness, it might be what we're doing at the elementary level. I'll be honest. I don't know that there's necessarily anybody out there that can say they're K-12, they know everything. And I've always, kind of relied on that. I know that this year, as being the executive director and working with curriculum at the elementary level, I've learned so much from working with the two great elementary principals that we have in place. So I think there's already a strong support group that's there. And part of that idea of being a leader is that you're supposed to empower people. And so if you have great people in place already, you need to let them do what they need to do. And so I think from the standpoint of, you asked me, what was a weakness? I would say it's probably working with elementary curriculum, okay? But keeping in mind that if we're looking at the big picture and we're trying to do PLCs across the board and we want to improve achievement, that's what we have principals in place. That's what their job is to do. My job is to look at the big picture overall, make sure that we're implementing PLCs in the right manner. And then I think that kind of takes that quote weakness out of the area, out of formula.
I agree, and I think your last interview, you gave a lot of compliments to your elementary staff, so.
It's, as I said this afternoon, to me, it's a community approach. It's not just one person. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tlamek, do you have another question?
Wait, is it time?
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Were you gonna do?
Oh,
Yeah, please. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Can I ask a question first before I? I'll ask the board and maybe someone who didn't talk at the last time we met. What's the number one concern facing the board or the district as we move forward? How about Sandy? And think about that. I'll come back to you. Ruth, how about you?
The biggest problem that we're facing immediately beyond COVID is financial, and that's statewide, national. But I think here in Buchanan, it's the healing process. There are many people who have felt out of the loop, including some within the buildings and some with outside the building. So I think we need to heal.
Mhm.
And we need to focus on students first.
Yep.
Students first.
And that's what our goal is, or that's what
It is. It
my
is.
expectations. To relate to that comment, I think in my time here, I've tried to communicate. Sometimes people would say too much, but I don't know that you can necessarily ever have too much communication out there. I think you want to have people up to date on what's going on and make sure that they have a chance to express their concerns. And so that's something that I would look at working with.
Thank you.
Come back.
And I would say trust. It's huge right now. We need to get that back within the district. If we're just talking about Buchanan and the kids, of course, and just build that
No.
trust and have fun again.
That 5 model, I'll go back to that, and that's just because I believe strongly in that. The number 2 there is being responsible, which to me, the phrase you could put in there is being respectful. So I think when you're dealing with people, no matter how you're doing it, and you're communicating with them, you're making sure that you put forth, the best that you can do and treat them with respect. And I think that I've done that during my time here. I think that if you talk to staff, and I may not agree with everything that's being done or whatever, but I know what my role is right now. I just think that you have to treat people with respect. It doesn't matter who it is. And I think that we can move a lot further along as we're going. So I think that I would do well with that area of bringing back the trust that some people may think is missing.
In communication.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think obviously the board has a tough decision to make. We have 3 people out there, and I happen to be the person that's internal. And so obviously, I believe that I'm the strongest candidate for that, and that's probably because I'm here already. And I think when you go back to that motto, which is being prepared, okay, which means you come in every day and you have an idea of what you're going to do, and you have a vision for what this district is right now and where you want it to go. And I think that comes from meeting and having good relationships with the administrative team that's in place right now, all the way down to the teachers and staff that are in the building, because we all work together. So I think that's first of all. Second one is responsibility, which I talked about already. The next one is integrity. I think that's vital in today's times. It kind of goes back to that trust issue of, again, how you treat people. Are you telling people what you really believe in, and then are you acting like that? Are you holding yourself accountable? If I make a mistake, hey, call me on it. Okay, that's all right. Dedication. I don't think anybody can argue with my dedication and the effort that I put in and the time that I've been here. And I would look forward to kind of just continuing that as the next superintendent. So, again, I appreciate the board taking the time to meet with me tonight. I know you have a tough decision, and I look forward to working with you as the board in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
Good
Mark.
evening.
Does anybody have any questions or discussion before we move into the next?
Everybody got, it went pretty good where the numbers, so I was just making sure that we're still good with the, seniority. Okay, I thought it went good. Everybody got a question in, so.
And we can skip, right?
We did.
Not all of them. Not all of them. He has to do 2. That's not.
I'll make sure I come back to you.
How long of a break were you gonna have?
I think we went to go
We're
get
gonna
it.
go into the next one unless everybody wants a break.
Let her get her duties done. Really? My boss. Her.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you. You're welcome. Nice. Wow. Look, community. Nice little portfolio. And it says superintendent entry plan, the first 100 days.
Members of the Board of Education, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Patricia Robbins.
Okay. You can set your stuff up on the counter behind you. Yep, if you're comfortable with that. Yes.
Okay. Everyone's here this evening, so you don't need headphones. Do we have headphones plugged in there?
And there's some right behind there if you, if you plug in the green. Just so you don't get any feedback.
Okay, so I need to have them around. No.
Welcome. Quickly, we're gonna go around the room, and we have an order, but not in a particular order here, and ask questions. We're gonna spend 30 minutes asking questions. Hopefully, everyone will get to ask at least one, if not two questions. And at the conclusion of the 30 minutes, then we will allow you to make a brief closing statement if you like. Okay. So, are you ready to begin? All right. Welcome. The first question goes to Dr. Burnett.
Okay. All right. Your experience in educational leadership is very robust and strongly focused on students succeeding academically and socially. This has included working with students and staff of color. If you are selected as superintendent, you will be the first woman of color to lead Buchanan Community Schools. How would you address parents, staff, and community fears, concerns, and/or limited understanding regarding this first for Buchanan, while at the same time leading the district forward and achieving its vision, mission, and beliefs for all students?
Okay, thank you for that question. And it would be a great honor and to serve the Buchanan Community Schools as the first African American woman here. I know that within any community where there is diversity, our race comes into question, and I really do need to build relationships with our families, having them to know me and know what I stand for, and basically it is all about kids. When we keep the main thing about kids is extremely important. Also, addressing any fears that they may have. I am very comfortable with talking about race, and I think this is a very good time to bring it out in the open. And to dispel any fears. I mean, I may have some fears, and I want them to know that as well. So I'm open to that conversation, and I think it's important that they're able to talk to me about that, and I'm able to speak openly to them about it. And examples and my life experiences will definitely be something that I bring to the table as well.
Thank you.
Hello. Our district is very divided. Our schools have very little collaboration with each other. How will you bring the community and schools together?
So one of the things that I do want to do is first listen to the staff. I have a entry plan there, and one of my phases is the phase 2. It talks about evaluate and listen, and that is going to be huge in me gathering information about what those divides are. We can be divided on curriculum. We could be divided on how we address parents. We could be divided on our strategies of how we actually teach. So I really need to know and grasp what those divisions are. It's important that staff also have a platform to speak their truth. I think that's important. And in sharing with them, establishing some norms of how we're going to operate and how we're going to respect each other's beliefs and what they're actually feeling. So as we actually do that, I think as we move forward, we develop goals, we chunk it up as well, so that everything is not brought out at the same time. And then we actually address it kind of systematically when those issues are brought out, and we actually have a concrete understanding of what our divisions are.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Glamick.
Some have concerned that there has been one district that has not achieved a successful level. In what ways would that experience facilitate and enhance your tenure at Buchanan?
That is a very, very good question. I appreciate that. So yes, my tenure was in a district that struggled academically. And in looking at what we were given, there's a lot of entities and various levels that actually play into that. That staff is a very hard-working staff. The staff there has the students in mind. It's just when we are coupled with some inequities in education, especially when it comes around funding, and it comes around just social economic disparities in a community, it is hard to get your rhythm. And it's also hard to get your rhythm when you have a turnover of administration constantly. With a district like that, you need stability, you need goals, and you need someone to be able to be there and lead and move forward with a plan. And once that doesn't happen, you continue to find yourself back in the same spot again. And if kids have, they go to a district where there's instability and there's dysfunction, they go home where there's instability and dysfunction. It just continues to reap and cycle itself over and over and over again. I applaud anyone and all of us who were in that district who continue to be steadfast and to support our students who are there. It is hard, and it is, you get kind of frustrated when you don't see the academic goals that you want to see, but you also know that socially you're actually making a difference because you are staying there and you're stable, something stable for the students. And I want to just add, just kind of what I'll bring to Buchanan is my passion for kids and my understanding of how kids work and what they need socially. And then also with the academic piece, I was able to meet the leaders today of most of the buildings. And I tell you the passion that they have within themselves and the goal orientation and the academic measures we want to put with their students is there. And I am excited if I'm chosen as superintendent to be able to lead that group because they have the passion there. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Ryder.
Well, Jim took my first question. Thank you very much, but I have a second. During the process, when I was speaking with a former supervisor of yours, I learned that you were involved in forming a partnership with Houghton Mifflin. And that was to enhance student literacy. Would you please explain this process? Was it successful? What would you do differently? And what is the value you place on literacy?
Wow. Okay, so I may have to come back to you for the second and third follow-up.
Okay.
So the process, whoa, it was huge. So my supervisor, or the former superintendent, he came in the district, and immediately one of the big things was we have to implement a reliable, valid, curriculum. So me being in the position that I was, immediately kind of did some research. I knew that he had worked with this company in his other district. We connected, brought them in. And I would say that company did wonders because we had maybe a month and a half to get some staff input, to order the resources that teachers needed, and then to get training. So not only did we have to train our teachers and staff, we also had to train our building administrators. We had to train the instructional coaches. We had to get some parents involved. We had to go before the board and let them know what was happening. So it was multi-tiered. I can't even explain it. It was a sprint race. And we were actually able to get it done. The process usually is that process, but you go a little bit slower. So if there were anything that I would change, I would actually, in just your normal kind of district or environment, you would have been able to do that within a year. So you would take a year to go through that process. Some of our big wins, we had some data, that show where our students the year prior to implementing this did not meet think it was like 90% of our students didn't meet their growth goals for our NWEA. And by the time at the end of the year, we implemented this, you saw, and I can't give you the numbers, but I do have the data with me, growth in the majority of our grade levels, K through 8. So I think there were 2 grade levels where you didn't see the growth. You may have saw some recession in there, a regression there, but you did see growth in the majority. And I thought that was a really good feat, given how we had to implement it. And on top of that, we had like less than 50% of certified teachers. So doing that with subs is huge, and knowing that we had a lot of turnover, and we couldn't keep subs, so you're constantly training our staff as you're going throughout the year. And so going back to the other question, that's another big issue within that district. Because there is such an inequity in funding, we have an inequity in pay. So to keep staff is hard. And so then to keep subs too is hard because they pay, there's a discrepancy in pay. So we're constantly changing staff, and you do what you can to support people. However, they have to support their families as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Leash.
If you are selected to be our next superintendent, what is your vision for Buchanan Community Schools?
So becoming just one of the most well sought after districts in Michigan. And that's period. I saw the potential today, going in and out of each building, seeing the passion behind the administrators, seeing the wonderful buildings that you have, and the love for community and the tight-knit community. And I can see, this district having, blue ribbon schools throughout the community, and us celebrating that, because there's a lot of potential there, especially when you look back at the data from the 18-19 school year. And I know if you had given the MSEP this year, you would have seen more growth. So there was a momentum of actually improvement. And just imagine if we had given that MSEP this year, we didn't have the COVID-19 pandemic, what growth would have actually happened. So I see you guys are well on our way to get to that part of where we could be a blue ribbon school in Michigan, and then also just being recognized nationally. There's lots of potential here, and lots of excitement. And just even, I see the district growing in enrollment, and which will also trickle into the community, growing the community. So, I mean, it is, because it's tight-knit, it's calm, it's welcoming, it's happy, you're being, recognized as one of the kindest places to live and to be. It is something that can actually draw people here. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Next question is to me. As an interim superintendent, what specific impact did your leadership have on the performance of Benton Harbor schools?
Specifically, I will go back to the social, emotional support that our staff was able to, and I was able to actually kind of navigate and implement within the district. One of them was being the mental health support of our staff and mental health support of our students. We were able to connect with Lakeland under my interim leadership and getting them some just strategies to utilize within the classroom with our students, helping them with their well-being, and then also helping them and the parents support their kids at home. So that was one of the biggest things that I was able to actually move within the district. And then the other big thing was just stabilizing the district and moving them forward with some of the goals that we had already planned. I mean, I was interim superintendent from last year, June, until February. And to stabilize, to open up a district with knowing that we have an issue with getting certified teachers, to open up a district with just a lack of resources, and then to open a district with just a bunch of other issues that's kind of pointing towards us. It was phenomenal to be able to do that, and keep everything kind of level and balanced.
Quickly, because you mentioned it a couple times, the lack of certified teachers. How did you address that?
So one of the things we did, and this was actually under my leadership, we tried to have, or we created what we called a grow your own teacher program. And we reached out to, number one, Western Michigan University to see what kind of alternatives or alternate routes they would offer that we could offer our staff in getting a quick certification. So, and then we also reached out to our foundation group asking if they could financially support our substitute teachers and taking the teacher test. Okay. When we got subs into our district, we asked if they were interested in getting their certification. Some of them had already bachelor's degrees and other things. So if they said yes, we provided a weekly training for them. And that was just around like general classroom strategies to help build their support and to keep them in the district until we can get them into a program, an alternative program that could quickly get them a certification. We also worked with MDE to get all of the information on what type of routes we can take, what type of certifications we can get our teachers. And lastly, I had connected with one of the, I think it's the outreach coordinator at Andrews. And we were actually talking about providing tutors for our teachers who needed to take the assessment, so that if they took that teacher assessment, they would be set up to actually pass that assessment. So that was, so when I left, that was the end of that, conversation. But those were some of the things that we tried to do to get teachers in and get them certified.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee?
You recently resigned from Benton Harbor Schools without first taking another position. Can you shed some light on your decision? Why did you decide to resign without having another job lined up first? And did you leave completely on your own volition?
Okay, all right. So today during the community talk, I was able to address that too, because I had gotten that question. And my resignation, I turned that letter in March 4th. And what played into me deciding was that I, core beliefs, which I shared with you all the other day, did not align with the core beliefs of what my former district was moving towards. We have had to work with a number of outside entities for a number of years. And as each of those entities come into play, we created plans. And those plans always kind of, they differed a little bit, but they never moved students. And it wasn't, to me, a way of supporting what my beliefs were. So I made the decision March 4th to put in my resignation letter, because basically it's almost like a relationship I just grew apart from. Our ideas and our beliefs just were not lining up together. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Burnett?
Sorry.
Dr. Burnett?
Okay. The mission, vision, and beliefs of Buchanan Community Schools focuses on preparing students for lifelong success in the global community. How would you achieve this in regards to diversity, including building a school teaching staff and school board that is representative of the Buchanan community which the district serves?
Okay. So one of the things is basically having that included in our strategic plan. If that is a strategic goal for the district, and we'll get all kinds of input into that, I think we can kind of we will list out what we'll do to do that. One of the things I've experienced is recruitment within the state of Michigan, and then also out of the state. I think it's important for programs to be created, just like the one that is created now with Lakeland in getting more students with internships. I think that's important to get our students into these programs and ensuring that our community, our kids come back to Buchanan as well and become citizens and good citizens, diverse, to increase the diversity here. So I think one of the big things is making sure it's in our strategic goals. So if it's not a goal, it's hidden. It's not even going to be there. It's not going to be talked about at all. So as we put this and make this our goal, this will be something that we can work through together as a staff on creating what those actionable steps will be. And one of those is recruitment.
Thank you. Ms. Tobin?
I'm gonna give you an easy one. I don't know. How do you deal with parent complaints?
The way I've dealt with them, parents call and they inform me what's going on. I then share that information with the building leaders. So if it's something within that building, I do like to ensure that my building leaders have an opportunity to respond to parent complaints. And then from there, I do kind of get some feedback from the building. Hey, let me know how it was resolved. I usually send the building administrator back to, if it's a parent or something like that, I send them back to them, letting them know this is what the parent called, how you're going to resolve it, get that information back to me, and we're good to go. And then if it's something that the parent is not satisfied with, then we have a meeting. But I usually dealing with parent concerns, especially if it's something regarding a building administrator. I do involve that building administrator and allow them that opportunity to lead and kind of work through the problem with the parent.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bowman?
Obviously, being a superintendent, you got all the goals with, the academic and all that, but then there's also other duties like state reports or that you have to complete. How are you gonna balance? Because I can tell you're passionate about education and students.
Yes.
That with all the other duties that are also important and need to be done in a timely manner.
So one of the things I was blessed with, and I think this came from Michigan Association of Superintendents or something like that, MESA, we have all kinds of acronyms. There is a superintendent's calendar that they put together. It's like a Google Doc, and you actually utilize that calendar to schedule your different reports. And every report that Michigan requires is on this document. And when I was interim, I actually connected that to my Google Calendar, and then whoever was responsible for those different reports, I connected them to that as well. And we met together to make sure that we met those deadlines. So to me, actually using what the State Department has available for us, connecting to the internal people or personnel who are responsible for those reports, and utilizing my calendar as well for that to kind of give you balance. And for me and my Google Calendar, I live by that. I put all of my entire, my entire life in it. Really.
Don't go down.
Really. Don't go down.
Mr. Ryder?
When you were at the open house virtual today, talked a little bit about this, but talking about professional development for your staff, but also you professionally and personally. What's your professional development?
So personally, I think I mentioned this, I don't know where I talked about this, but kind of with everything going on, I've just taken it upon myself to re-educate myself about our social issues, our racial issues, kind of history as well, American history. So I've taken it upon myself to do that. And professionally, I started my doctorate degree, but then I stopped when I had, I think, my last interim, or the interim position before the last one. I did take a pause on that, but as I've been kind of reflecting during this time, one of my passions is about policy and procedures. So I know there are programs out there around that, and I want to be an advocate. I want to be an advocate for our students, and I want to advocate for equitable funding. I want to advocate for that, and just not in urban and rural districts, but for our students overall. I think that's important. So that's something that I am going to jump on, and as I've been kind of doing some research and reading upon that as well. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Leish?
I am going to pass, actually, because I'm not ready for mine. Thank you.
A short one here. In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the Buchanan School District?
of course, number one, I would say relationships and trust. So that's a big thing that I have to go in and build and develop relationships and build trust I would say another thing is that I actually went through some of your board meeting minutes and saw that there was an audit that was recently done. So, and I know there were from the other report that was taken, there was some information about having some procedures within the finance department. So the other area would be the finance and budget department is where I see some of the biggest challenges are.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee?
In your first review, when asked what you learned about the district, you shared data and assessment results, but said little about the spirit of the district and the community. If selected, what would you do to become a part of the Buchanan community?
Okay. So one of the things I did, and I did, kind of did some reflection too. I came to Buchanan Saturday and kind of just walked around downtown. I went in and out of some shops, introduced myself, went to the library, which was actually utilized as well. So one of the things I will do is just make myself visible within the community. I brought my kids. I have a set of twins who are 13, so we went to Subway and actually, got us a couple sandwiches as well. And with the community events, I'm big on being involved with community events, so I am there. And things within the school district, I'm here. So I have interspersed myself because I'll say this, I live in Eau Claire, but I worked in Benton Harbor. So no one ever knew that I didn't live in Benton Harbor. That's how much I was in Benton Harbor. And that's how much I will be here. So you will never know that I don't, because I'm here all the time. And one of the value adds is if I do become your superintendent, I will bring my 13-year-old kids. I have a boy-girl set of twins. And so then them getting involved with activities, I'm here supporting them and supporting other kids as well. So that will be another value add if I become the superintendent here.
Thank you. Mrs. Leish?
Nothing yet. Sorry, I wasn't working on it. Listening. What?
I'm sorry, like, I don't know.
You can pass.
One of the things that community groups has always done is work in partnership with how we envision continuing that partnership with these, continue to dare those. How do you envision that?
I definitely envision them continuing. And one of the things that, part of my list that I'm creating, like, who do I want to meet? I definitely want to meet the police chief here. I have a personal passion for police officers. I am married to a state trooper. He's Lieutenant Program Popoff. So I have a passion for that. And I understand the value that police officers have with students and how that then trickles as they become, older. So definitely something that I will reach out and continue within the district.
Thank you. Sandy?
I don't have any more questions.
I think we're done.
I don't know if
1 minute.
Jim? Do you have a question? Okay.
Oh, I've got one and no one else.
What?
Okay. I gotta find it again. Can you speak to one or two controversial decisions that you made while interim superintendent at Benton Harbor? How did you deal with those?
Not a minute.
How did you deal with those your decisions?
Oh, okay. So one that comes to mind, which it was not a decision that was made lightly, but it had to be made because of budget decisions. So we had a dual language program in our district, and I had to cut it because of budget constraints. And when we looked into the program was set up some years ago. We didn't have the resources that we needed for that. We didn't have the certified teachers that we needed for that. So it was a name in theory and not the program with content. So talking to parents, of course, passionately, they wanted the program to stay. And when we look at the numbers of enrolled students and the number of the amount of money that we were spending, we had to cut it. So it was voted to eliminate the program. I guess the backlash was that I had to meet constantly kind of throughout that summer with parents, ensuring them that where the kids would go next would be something that a place where they would be supported. And then I had to follow through with what I said as well, making sure that they had the teachers that they wanted, and any other resources that were needed with their transportation, bilingual person there that they could communicate with. I had to make sure that those things were in place. So that's, but it was tough. It wasn't easy. We had um, board meetings that filled our auditorium, and I had to speak candidly to that and show the budget and the enrollment and all of that. It was tough. It was tough. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that concludes our questions. Do you have a statement you'd like to make to close?
sure. I visited the building today and felt really connected. And if you are led to choose me as the next superintendent, believe me in saying that I am going to work hard to support our staff, our principals, to support our students, to support the concerns that parents might have. I am invested, I would be wholeheartedly invested in this community and in this district. I even went so far as to create or kind of develop an overall entry plan so that I'm ready at the drop of a hat if chosen. That plan has 4 different phases to it, very quickly, kind of broad, and it is fluid, so it's nothing that is set in stone, but it's something that I want to utilize as a guide for me personally as I move forward. I want to ensure that you have an ally, you have someone who's going to work with you wholeheartedly, even with challenging conversations. I am here. I've dealt with them, and I would be so honored to serve as your next superintendent here at Buchanan Community Schools. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And all your efforts. Yeah. We're going to discuss for 5 minutes and then return for our third interview.
Okay.
Brian. Brian.
Brian.
Uh-oh. I'm not in compliance, sorry. There I am now.
Assuming I am not sitting this time.
You don't need to plug it either.
You do not need to plug it. Well, you just need to plug something in, but
You
you do
can
not.
put your stuff
need
back
to
on the
use-
shelf, sorry.
There's already one plug in there.
Yep.
Oh, there's already one plugged in. Okay.
So I can do
So
that.
we're all here this evening.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mask off and
You're on here because.
Yeah, I
You don't have to use it.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all
don't have
plugged
to
in.
use it.
we're all here. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Handle this. This is different. It's funny, I literally was just telling my wife earlier that, oh my gosh, if I could be not just sitting, that would be so much more comfortable because it's so better to, I'm used to walking around and thinking and talking out loud that, I mean, I promise I won't walk around, but I'm saying this is great. Thank you.
so your video from there and your mic from the Chromebook.
From the Chromebook. Okay, so you'll be able to hear me okay? They'll be able to hear me okay?
I'll be able to hear you okay and see you as long as you stay in front of the Chromebook.
I can handle that.
Great. So we have an order of questioning that we'll work through. We're gonna have to spend 30 minutes asking questions.
Mhm.
There may be a few follow-up questions in there, and then after 30 minutes, we'll give you a minute or two to make a closing statement if you'd like.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So if you're ready to begin, and Dr. Burnett's ready to begin, we will, the first question goes to Dr. Burnett.
All right. Question goes is this. The mission, vision, and belief of Buchanan Community Schools focuses on preparing students for lifelong success in a global community. How would you achieve this in regards to diversity, including building a school teaching staff and school board that is representative of the Buchanan community which the district serves?
Okay. So I'll start off by saying that I am a product of Buchanan, and I feel like that Buchanan has made a good product and put forth to the public a very good product. So I would like to shout that I am a success story of Buchanan. With regards to diversity and making certain that we're addressing the needs of not only the community. Quite frankly, I'm a white male, and I don't understand absolutely everything that is going on, all the racial and ethnic groups that are out there. But I recognize that there is a problem, and the problem has to be addressed. And with the problem being addressed, I can spearhead stuff, but I better be listening. I better not be doing the talking, because it is not my place to make general assumptions if I don't know. So it would have to be a dialogue, and it would have to come from multiple people. And quite frankly, the dialogue is important. It's the follow-up that's even more important, because nowadays it seems we know how to talk, but we just don't necessarily know how to follow through. And so to answer your question, I think that we would have to have dialogue, have action steps in order to move forward, and go from there. Did I catch everything? I didn't write down the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Tobler.
More than one person has commented that you are so nice, maybe too nice, and that you want everyone to like you. How will you handle an extreme, unpopular, although totally necessary decision?
So, yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that. And I do understand that. So unpopular decisions are made all the time. Unfortunately, they don't have to be made with all parties being frustrated, angry, and screaming, and yelling at each other. So ultimately, what I have done, and I'm going to bring up my experiences with River Valley, because that's where a majority of my tough decisions on the financial side have come. If I am including and being inclusive with the people, that the parties that are involved, there is no surprise at all at any point during any tough conversations. So, for instance, with this lovely lack of funds that we would be seeing, it was throughout the whole process, very transparent, this is what we're looking at, just giving you a heads up. It's nice to be transparent, and maybe that's part of the problem, and it's not a problem in my opinion. It is, but it helps with the decision. So when somebody is frustrated or upset, if they know the why of what's happening, then it tends to be a lot better, which coincidentally makes me look a lot better, which then I get the name Too Nice Brian for that. That's how, I would address, because accountability is very important with people, and the fact that they know, and as long as I'm inspecting what I'm expecting and communicating that to people, nothing that I say should be a surprise and should not cause hostility or anger or frustration.
Okay.
Theoretically, that is so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can go on.
Okay. This is a question I was given. On our list of, what we're looking for a candidate of a new superintendent, one of them is 5 years of successful experience serving as an educational administrator. A number of individuals expressed concerns about your lack of such experience. In your years as an educator, you have not been a principal, nor have you been a leader in the central office other than a business manager. How do you answer these concerns?
And those are great concerns to have, and it's not anything that hasn't gone through my head, and I completely agree. So what I think it boils down to is leadership, and leadership at any different level still translates to different levels. I don't want to discount anything that I have done, because I feel like central office work has still been, it's still 4+ years of working in central office and making difficult decisions and helping run a school district, which is what a superintendent does. The lack of experience, I feel like, is overshadowed by the fact that I have that experience with the business office, I have the financial experience, and then if you want to throw in the fact that I taught in school for 14 years, so I know what the education system is like. I've been through good principals, I've been through good superintendents, I've been through a lot, and I've gained a lot of information. And that even goes to my last superintendent that just retired, was a great example for me to follow, and a lot of information that I was able to glean off of him. So for those that are concerned about the lack of experience that I have, I do have the experience in central office, which I'm comfortable with. I do have experience leading in vertical teams that we had. So we have teachers that were all together and making decisions with regards to curriculum. And then I also have leadership experience outside of school, so I sit on the board for Honor Credit Union and vice chair for Honor Credit Union. We make decisions there all the time for a $1 billion corporation. So that's just some of the things that I would counter. Is there still a lot to learn? Oh, heck, I would hope that there's always a lot to learn, because I think in life we continue to learn always. So I'm definitely not going to say that I know everything, but I will definitely say that I will always work the hardest towards the best solution, regardless of whatever is in front of me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Ryder.
Okay, you briefly touched on this. Although you've been a math chair for grades 5 through 7, and you were part of our math vertical team, K-12. What is your curriculum experience in the other core areas? And K-12, state and national standards, other than math?
Other than that, okay. Great questions. And another thing that I anticipated, because I do have the finance background, and definitely want to make sure that I expand upon curriculum background just a little bit. So you are correct, and math is my strength in that particular area, and it is through K through 12 that we worked with. So I'm going to go back just a little ways to when I first started They came out with something called grade level content expectations, and I was part of all of that. And so that goes with ELA, that goes with math. And so we took and we unpacked all of that stuff, all that curriculum, and then we used that and built that into what we were teaching students as teachers. And that's multi-grade level. The multi-grade level for social studies and for my most experience that I have is actually at River Valley with regards to what those are. And it's a matter of, from the finance side, the superintendent and myself would be sitting down and going over the proposal that highlighted what was to be purchased or what was wanted to be purchased, how it aligned with the curriculum, making sure that we understood the curriculum and making sure that whatever was being purchased was something that was going to match what River Valley needed in order to fill the holes that were being identified for each content area so far. And that includes, we call it non-core, which is art and all of the other non-core curriculum. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mrs. Leash.
If you are selected to be our next superintendent, what is your vision for Buchanan Community Schools?
So Buchanan has so much to offer, and that's what we need to make sure that we're shouting to the world, because we do. We've talked about the Buchanan Promise before. We've talked about all the good things that are happening here. So my vision for Buchanan Schools is we have a really good track record right now with our test scores, stuff like that. So our students are performing pretty well. So we just need to make sure that we figure out a way to get to the next level. And honestly, I think with all the PLC groups that we have, that is something that needs to obviously continue, because we're seeing good positive results that are coming from all of that. Vision-wise, athletics, man, I just want to win state championships up tonight. But that's me being a buck, and I understand. Beyond that, I'm going to speak a little bit outside of the student area, and I want to make sure that I'm touching on maybe the staff area. I want it to be a place where people want to be, where people want to work. And I want people to be able to say, they get up in the morning and they're like, hey, you know what? I want to go into work and I just enjoy it. So I want to be with the kids. I want to be with my fellow staff people. I want to be part of that success that is happening at Buchanan. So that's the culture that I would like to be able to bring, and that's what I would like to ultimately be the vision of Buchanan moving forward. Is it's a great community to be in, and a great school system to be in as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question is to me. You talked about vision in the perfect world. Right now, we're in the vision of facing the COVID situation.
Yes.
How are you prepared to deal with that and be an outside the box thinker to those situations?
Thank you. And you're right. That is the reality that is facing every single one of us today. I will be optimistic and hope for a vaccine incredibly soon, but I know that also is probably not a realistic solution either. So we have to be able to, and we're addressing that now, and I believe Buchanan is also addressing that now through the return to school plan. And that is something that has to be approved by the board before August 15th. So what we are doing, and I know Buchanan has started, I just don't know what phase they are in right now. We're looking at, we have the return to school, we have the plan that we put together in the spring, and that deals with phases 1, 2, and 3. And then our phase 4, superintendents across the county have fortunately gotten together and have been able to strike common areas that we are able to use as a county. And so everybody's going to have that in the plan. And then what we'll end up doing is we'll make certain that we fill in the blanks of what Buchanan needs. Or what I'm working on tomorrow with all of our group, is whatever school district you're in needs. So outside the box thinking is what's going to differentiate Buchanan from anywhere else. And quite frankly, some of the positive thing is here, we already have an online learning tool that is used, and I'm hopeful that is something that is going to be utilized and maybe pushed for those people that are not comfortable with coming back. I'm not 100% certain with what the infrastructure is. So I don't know if it's something that we are able to stream out of classrooms into homes, so that way students could stay at home, yet still get lessons, or if we have the capability of putting together lessons and transmitting them via electronic, however students are to get them. But we also need to make sure that we're prepared to understand that not everybody has access to internet, not everybody has access to good internet. I hate there's internet and then there's good internet. So we have to come up with a plan for that. And unfortunately, the plan is either we figure out a way to get them good internet through the CARES Act money or something like that, or we give them paper pencil stuff. But quite honestly, I mean, the instruction is not the same if you don't have a teacher in front of you. And the ideal situation is to have kids in a classroom because that's where the best learning is going to be taking place. But I also am not positive what is the return rate of kids going to be, or how comfortable are people going to be sending students back to school. That's where I would be concerned, and that I don't know if Buchanan has done a poll of the families to find out whether or not the students are going to be coming back. That's definitely a good key, because that's how you're going to be able to figure out where are teachers going to be, and are teachers comfortable being in that environment, and are they at high risk? And if they are at high risk, what can they do that would put them still doing their job, but also keeping them safe at the same time? I went rattle on. Thank you.
Next question to Mr. Lee.
There's always a learning curve when you start a new position.
Yeah.
What do you think you will need to learn in order to be a highly effective superintendent? And what resources will you use to help you learn?
You're right. There is always a learning curve that definitely takes place in any new position that you get in. So what I found very helpful for me when I moved over to the business manager position is there's a network of business managers in the area that, they are amazing people, because they will help you to the nth degree. And from my understanding as well, through speaking with superintendents in the local area, we have great superintendents at Niles, at Brandywine, all over the place. At River Valley, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, at River Valley. So we have great superintendents that have that experience that you're able to draw on and you're able to help guide. Now, understanding full well that their vision, that's not necessarily our vision. So you have to take the bits and pieces of what we need for our school district. So that's one of the things that I would try to do, is network and try to make sure that I get around people that we can share and exchange ideas, so that way we can forward and help each other. Others, professional development. They have amazing classes that they provide in professional development to help new superintendents in particular get up to speed and move along. And then in particular for me, I literally have a class this upcoming fall at Grand Valley with regards to superintendent position as well. Thank you.
I'm sorry. 15 minutes. Okay, Dr. Burnett.
You have worked for Buchanan Community Schools in the past. How do you plan to incorporate objective educational leadership and administrative style that focuses on holistic student success first, and not allow personal bias, subjective opinions, and current relationships with administrators, staff, parents, and community members negatively influence this process?
Great question. And I don't mean this because I also you're right. I do know an awful lot of people, and I am familiar with a lot of people. Most people who know me, first let me say, I think that's a strength, actually, when I think about the whole thing, because when it comes to communication, you have the sender and then you have the receiver. And really, if the receiver trusts you and respects you, then the message that I am trying to get across is going to get through. What I am trying to get through is going to be heard by the receiver. So if you have trust and you have the respect, then I feel like that's a good thing. That's a great place to start. And then with that, there's always people that will try something, correct? Knowing full well that should I ever go down that path, I have literally lost the trust of everybody that I have made up to this point. If that's not deterrent enough for me, I do not deserve this position. And I totally, that is absolutely true. Decisions are made with information, decisions are made with data, and decisions are made with people talking through and getting the best information possible in order to make the decision. It is not based upon, I know A, I know B, I know C, nor should it ever be.
Just to make sure, just to follow up. So how would you address kind of, we term it the good old boys club kind of a thing?
Okay, so I'm not a fan of the good old boys club because the good old boys club does stuff behind closed doors, which is anti-transparency, and I'm big in transparency. I'm not big in doing things behind people's back. I have a reputation to uphold, and I will not ruin my reputation over something like that. Thank you. That's a great question.
What will be one of the first changes you'd like to make in our district's plans?
My nameplate. Beyond that, what I'd really like to do is I'd really like to get to see what exactly is happening. I would like to know how leadership teams are formed. I would like to know how. So I had the tour today was absolutely great. You have great principals, and I knew that before, but this was just a great reinforcement that I had afterwards. So knowing, speaking with them a little bit regarding some of the teams that they have, so to speak. I'm a fan of having the stakeholders together. So right now, I don't think that they are all together at the same time, and I think that's a key thing. So one of the important things that we have done at River Valley is we have all of the stakeholders meet once a month, maybe more depending upon what critical ideas need to be resolved. But we meet and we hash everything out, we figure things out, and we try to get everybody on the same page. If everybody's on the same page, everybody's moving forward in the right direction and not going scattered in their own different directions. And I think it's important that everybody has the same message so they can communicate and move forward with the same message instead of creating your own. So if I were to actually do something different than just a nameplate, it literally would be to make sure I'm forming teams that are stakeholders that can get together and resolve problems and get on the same page forward. So we're not, so we can build better unity is really what it boils down to.
Important. Thank you.
Mr. Polamic.
Going from business manager to superintendent is a big jump. How can you assure everyone that you are ready? And then the follow-up with that would be, how will you deal with issues and problems where you simply do not have the experience, expertise, or institutional knowledge to ensure that you're making the right decision?
So I mean, I can tell you all day till I'm blue in the face that I will take over and everything will be perfect and everything will be great. And you know what? The world is a happy place. But I also know that you're right. I am brand new coming into a position. I feel comfortable coming into that position because of the experiences that I've had, not only in teaching, but also in central office, as well as outside with board work and even doing volunteer stuff, has all made me who I am today, which that is the experience that I think is going to be utilized within the superintendent position, creating the leadership that will transmit across all of the school and hopefully into the community as well. But ultimately, there's not one word that I'm going to be able to say that is going to get anybody to jump on and say, "Yep, you're right. He's totally on board." It's going to be action. It's going to be seeing me, making sure they see me, making sure that I am doing the right thing, making sure that I am being transparent. Time will prove that I am ready for this position, and that's probably the only. There's no words that will do it. Actions will definitely speak a heck of a lot louder than words for that. Now I'm going to completely apologize. What was the second part?
And it was like, how, like you said, how are you sure you're ready? But the follow-up was, how will you deal with issues and problems that you simply do not have the experience, expertise, or institutional knowledge to ensure you're making the right decision?
Gotcha. Yes, thank you. So first, you never make decisions off the cuff, because if you do talk about getting in trouble really quick, that would be one way to get in trouble really, really quick. You gather information, you gather knowledge, depending upon what it is that you're looking for. If you have time to gather the knowledge, that's even better. But sometimes you can't, sometimes you don't have time. You better have a pretty good network of people that you can talk to, speak with, that are trustworthy and that you are familiar with. And quite honestly, I'm not trying to put you guys in the spotlight or anything, but you guys would be my boss. And so you know who I would be speaking with as well. I would be speaking with you guys as well, especially if it's anything of significant matter. So in order to make the right decision, I'm going to collect data, I'm going to analyze the data, and I'm going to make sure that I am making the right decision based off the information that I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's my turn again. Brian, professional development is important, and you spoke a little bit as to your professional development at Grand Valley. You're going to be taking a course. What experience do you have in providing top quality professional development for teachers and staff, and have you supported that support staff professional development? And then speak a little bit more about your own personal development.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the teachers and what I have done up to this point. So River Valley was fortunate. They were very, very pro professional development. So pretty much any conference that can be justified to fit with our curriculum was approved, and teachers went, administrators went, and so whatever they could find in order to enhance their curriculum to help them to become better teachers, they were very much a proponent of it. Whether it be through title funds was always the first choice, but if not, then general fund monies were set aside in order to address that, because professional development was strongly encouraged and very much taken, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but used to help, which was fantastic. And so I'm a big fan of professional development, because if we're going to be lifelong learners, then we better do what we say our kids should be doing, quite honestly. So from my own personal perspective, I'm going to go back to when I was teaching in 5th grade, and I was trying to figure out whether or not I wanted to be a business manager, and superintendent at the time and I were discussing, and she's like, just take the classes. And I did, and I went through all of the classes in order to become a business manager. And so through that process, that is really important, because that led me into my next phase in education. But that never ends at that point, because there's always something happening, and there's always something new to go to. The latest ones, of course, have been all of these lovely Troon and Clark Hill webinars that I've been able to attend. That's always fun. And if there's any lawyers, I'm very sorry. But if I'm staying on top of what's happening in the school environment, I think I don't have a choice. I need to make sure that I am in there where the news is being delivered, and then I can act on it if need be. I need to be a role model and show people that it's important, and it's definitely important for our teachers and staff as well.
Could I follow up? briefly, sometimes professional development is all about the content. What about social emotional professional development? Because that's the new thing and we're learning so much and teachers are perhaps going, how do I do this?
And you're right. That is an important thing, especially nowadays, especially with kids being cooped up. I don't know if that's a great word, but that's
Yeah.
what's really happened for how long they have been cooped up. So social emotional needs are a high priority, probably for any school district, not just Buchanan's right now. And there are now coming out, at least from what I have seen, a lot of different professional development for teachers, for staff members, for even administrators, so that way they can address and recognize the issues that are being faced by a lot of families that are nowadays. So, yeah, I think that's it's necessary in order to, like, to me, that's almost something that you do at the beginning of the year, even for everybody, because everybody is going to be affected by this once we start school again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Leish.
How would you handle a serious problem between a principal or a teacher and a parent?
So is it between the principal and the teacher, or the principal and the parent?
How they wrote it, it could be either a principal with their staff or with a parent with either principal or teacher.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a little, I didn't write it.
I will do my best to interpret it the best I can. Well, I think.
Yes, yeah.
So, it's fact gathering. I mean, I'm not one to sit there and go and say, hey, you did this based on what somebody said, because there are two sides to every story. And most stories tend to lean one way or the other, depending upon who you are. So without understanding the whole issue, you really got to be able to talk to the parent. You really have to be able to talk to the teacher. You really have to be able to talk to the principal. If it's a teacher and a parent issue, I would hope that the principal would be able to handle that situation. But if it's something that the superintendent needs to get involved with, by all means, then the superintendent needs to get involved with it. But I think that that's escalating it to, like, I would hope that it wouldn't go straight to the superintendent, because I would hope that the parties would be able to iron it out and work out amicable, whatever that word is, solution.
Yeah.
And be able to solve it. Knowing that doesn't happen all the time, and knowing that you could easily come to the conclusion there's going to be one ticked off party. That's probably not a professional word, but there's going to be one party that's not going to be happy, but it's going to go back to, again, this is what we have. This is the information that we have, and we've put it all out there. What else can you do? I mean, it's understanding why the decision was made by all parties that are there.
I liked your fact checking it, so making sure you have all your facts, for sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't give a
Oh, no.
Brian, we've got a couple minutes here for you to make a last statement.
Yeah.
Anything?
First, I want to thank you guys, actually, because sitting through the River Valley Superintendent search that they did, I know that they worked their tails off. I know you guys have been working your tails off, and I'm incredibly thankful for everything that you do for the community. And if the community does not know that, I need to make sure they're aware. You were really busy, and you were doing a lot of homework to make sure that you are doing the right candidate. Obviously, I am biased, and I would love to be the candidate of the superintendent of Buchanan schools. I feel that I have the experience. I feel that I have the gumption. But that's how I feel. I have the desire, the passion, and drive to be the next superintendent of Buchanan schools. But regardless, I just want to say thank you guys for everything that you do. I know it's a thankless job, but I will thank you. So
Thank you.
thank you guys very, very much.
Thanks. Don't forget your head.
You.
Bye, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you.
we'll give Mark an opportunity to walk Brian out. I think he's got a few questions for us to revisit the process. Visit the process for tomorrow.
I will kind of go with what Brian said there at the end. I feel like they've been through a grad class. I have read so much. I've I mean, oh my God, I typed so much. I felt like I was in school. It was very lengthy process, and I think part of it is because we had a condensed version. So the past 7 days have been grueling.
I enjoyed the research though.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh, the reference.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
time consuming.
I felt we were more involved this time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I felt much more involved. The process of those interview questions of references and so on was in depth, and I really appreciated that.
So this is all stuff Mark should hear too when he gets
And
back.
yeah. But I've also mentioned this to him in some emails and so on. Yeah.
I never take a nap, and I had to take a nap Saturday. I was exhausted.
Mark, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Actually, we're done. We talked all about it.
Well, I will repeat what I said. I thought this was grueling, but very beneficial, and I appreciate the process. I felt much more adept at making decisions this time. I appreciated it.
Good. Glad to hear that. Can you hear me okay? So I feel that as you're getting echo back, I feel as you're talking, it's really good interviews tonight. I really enjoyed the time I spent with candidates this afternoon, and I thought the process tonight moved seamlessly. And you've got some more authentic answers to your questions, and you probably scripted interview questions in the first round. It's hard not to do that in the first round to script those when we're doing everything virtually, but I thought you did really, really well. So what were some of the things that resonated with you tonight that you heard? Anything you want to share?
I think from our history with our community, how are we going to get to know the candidate came out, and with Tish coming to town and learning about our community was huge. I thought that was awesome. And that she brought her family, and that she made that commitment to us that she would be seen, and she's already done it. I thought that was really cool.
I listened to the open house meetings this afternoon, and I learned so much about Mark Curlin, who I've worked with for 18 years, with Brian. I learned so much by listening to Trish. That was one of the most beneficial hour and a half or whatever the amount of time was. That was extremely beneficial. And the questions that were asked were very pertinent. They were questions that I was interested in. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, when you see the feedback from tonight's interviews, you're going to see that there's a couple that bled over from this afternoon in there, because I opened both of them up at the same time inadvertently, so two or three people get the wrong ones. I don't think it's a big issue. As I'm looking through there, the comments are still valid and everything like that, but you'll be able to sense that when you look at a couple responses.
So walk us through the process from here. What questions do you have? What do we need to do to prepare for tomorrow?
So I would like to give each one of you a call, probably tomorrow morning sometime, or if you want to talk for 10 minutes afterwards tonight too, but tomorrow morning before you get there, you'll have a chance to look at the audience feedback and everything like that. tomorrow, when we come to the meeting, we want to talk about what you glean, the audience feedback from, both the virtual and tonight. It's important that we have some kind of discussion about what the references said, and especially how many people you talk to, because my gosh, I look and, well, I can't even count it up for sure right now, but I think all in all, you talk to somewhere around 15, 16 people, which is incredible. I mean, think of all the vetting and the calls and everything. So we need to talk about that a little bit. And then really at that point, Mr. President, it's just time to start discussing about the strengths of the candidates and starting to, identify if you have a candidate that you would like to begin negotiation with, how many you have, they'll come out in discussion. And it's time to start making a case for that candidate. Hopefully we'll reach consensus on the candidate, and we'll move forward that way. I think it's important that we show support to the board for the candidate choice. Sometimes that means that people have to move up their positions a little bit if it's a candidate you don't feel good about. I'm not asking anybody to go against values or anything like that. Sometimes if you have a vote that's not unanimous, it's a good idea for one of the dissenting people to come back and say, I recommend we take the second vote and cast a unanimous ballot at that point. So you have the opportunity to speak to my own conscience, but then when the rule of the board is shown that you're on board with everything else. In a motion to have the board president, authorize the board president, and one other board member I would recommend to enter contract negotiations as soon as possible for that candidate. And that's why I was contract relations, what that looks like. I put together kind of a little cheat sheet that just pulls out some highlights. I'll send out to you as well. So there may be some things in there that you thought, well, this kind of caused us problems in the past, and maybe this is a good time to address it. One of the things I get on there is what's sometimes called the evergreen clause, and that is that if the board doesn't take action, it automatically rolls over. So that's maybe one of the things to take a look at in there, and just say the board must take action. And if it doesn't, it rolls over. Another thing we're seeing in some of the contracts is the board doesn't take any action until the second year. So the first year is really just kind of more of a probationary step, and then after 2 years, the board decides to extend for a couple of years at that time if they're well pleased with the candidates. So those are some of the conversations to have, and maybe at least this one has to say on it. Okay. Does that sound like a good process? You're clear on that and everything?
What time tomorrow?
6.
Tomorrow, right?
Here again, it's kind of all on too fast tomorrow, or something's not clear. Slow me down, please. There was a question about reaching out to principals to kind of assemble a feedback piece. There's a survey Val was sending out. She has sent it out already. Okay. Okay. We'll have that information by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I'll shoot it to you. Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Does anybody have any more questions for Mark? Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, comments from board members? Well, then the meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting will be tomorrow night, July 21st, 2020 at 6 p.m. Meeting is adjourned. By the way, if I don't get a chance to say this, both Michelle and Phil are just awesome.
Thank you.